Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to be talking about our first impressions of Ark Nova by Capstone Games. This has been a game that has already breached the BGG Top 100 list.
Already?
Off of just having a European release.
Man, wow. Yeah, I didn't realize it was already.
It has been at the top of BGG for months on end now. And we just got our hands on a copy. We did a test run off camera, did a filmed gameplay on camera, and we're all going to talk about our first impressions of it, right? We'll probably have a more in-depth review, right for you, wrong for you, coming down the line here on Quackalope, but we need to get a few more games under our belt before we actually do that. With that being said, in this video we're going to talk about, well, an overview of the game to give you an understanding of exactly, well, how it plays in general. Talk about what we liked well, what we liked not so well, what we didn't like across the board.
So well.
And then just general first impressions. First kind of gut check on the game, where it lands, if we're going to seek it out, if we're planning on holding on to it, if it has us compelled. And I think the overarching question, because all of us saw the conversation happening around the internet saying Ark Nova is
Terraforming Mars.
Yeah. I get the comparison, but I also, at the same time, don't. Because in Terraforming Mars, like, you've got a shared board that you're building off of that has a lot more interaction than this in terms of like where something might be placed that you want something placed. Not a ton compared to games that I typically enjoy, because I enjoy player interaction heavy experiences. But you also have the different terraforming levels that you're trying to gradually increase, and you're measuring those, and you're basing that off of the cards you play. And this,
then again,
the only thing I really honestly see that's more similar to Terraforming Mars is the card art.
I hear. But all right, let's set up an overview for what Ark Nova is. Because here's the thing. I think you're overlooking the fact that the race system is similar in Terraforming Mars. You're racing towards the end of the board, trying to project the end of the construction phase, or the end of the habitation phase. Here, you're smashing your two ecological tracks and funding track together. You have tableau building, which is the same when it comes to sequencing cards and making sure you have some prerequisites to pay for next cards that come out, paired with the fact that these provide the player interaction that you might get on the main board in Terraforming Mars. You have the polyomino tile laying when it comes to building out an adjacency and scoring based on how you've built out your ecological zone. And sure, it's not a shared board, but it does directly impact your scoring, and it's a big part of the game. So I think there's a lot of things that are actually ties between the two.
To me, what you just described is a lot of disparate mechanics in which each of them are done differently, and to which none of them are tied together like Terraforming Mars.
Let's set the overview. Yeah. Let's set the overview, because I think it's going to be an interesting conversation.
It's going to be a great conversation.
West, you're the one that taught us how to play. Do you want to give us a 60-second on kind of the framework of what this game is?
Yes. Basically, this is Zoo Tycoon in a form or fashion.
Terraforming Mars.
I mean, it's kind of like Terraforming Mars, but that discussion will happen in a moment. Basically, you are building out your zoo. You're trying to get different animals. You're also getting sponsors that'll give you money and allow you to do different things. You're also pairing with universities to try to get additional content, and you're pairing with other zoos across the countries and across the world to get extra benefits from those. But the main point is you're trying to attract people with these ticket icons, and that piece is going all the way around the board. And then you also have your conservation, because zoos are always ecological. They're looking for ways to conserve animals out in the country. So you also have a conservation track. And as those two pieces meet, once that happens, that triggers game end, and you all have one more opportunity to play, or at least everyone has an opportunity to play. That's basically it.
The core structure of the game is going to be composed of taking actions around this player grid down here. Everyone's going to have the same sequence of cards, and they do upgrade throughout the course of play, but the basics are going to be sponsors, animals, associations, build, and cards. Now, cards is going to let you draw up. Build is going to allow you to establish different properties that you can hold different birds and creatures like that on your zoo. Association is going to allow you to specifically interact with this upgrade track over here. Animals is going to allow you to play animals down into those habitable zones that we've already established. And sponsors are going to allow you to play your, sponsor cards, which are like sort of skill cards or event cards, for instance.
Basically.
The core function of this programming is going to be the fact that anytime you play a card, you take the strength based on where it is on the row. Then everything else behind it cycles up, and that card cycles down to the back end, meaning that you're always trying this 3 to 5 turn sequencing puzzle, right? Where you're trying to get, let's say, animals up to level 5 to play 2 cards from your hand. Well, what cards from these 2 can I take? Or what can I take that builds something that allows something to shift? Trying to reprogram this constantly throughout the course of the game. Oftentimes it works in your favor, and then sometimes it becomes a, I'd say, roadblock, an obstacle that you're actually trying to struggle against. Outside of that, the marketplace, unlike Terraforming Mars, is actually going to be an open marketplace where you're drafting cards. It's sort of an open draft instead of a private public one where you're handing cards around. So let's talk the very first thing. Let's establish expectations and first general impressions. So
expectations, everyone told me it was like Terraforming Mars, and hate on me if you want, I hate Terraforming Mars. I've never had a good experience.
He has not played
with
with Prelude and drafting included, just throwing that out there.
Yes, a 4-hour game of Terraforming Mars drives me absolutely insane. It's not something I ever want to do again. So when everyone said this was a lot like Terraforming Mars, I went, oh great, a game that I'm not going to like.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. I actually did definitely enjoy it. But yes, it's very, very similar to Terraforming Mars. I actually think it took a lot of good things from Terraforming Mars and made some of them better, arguably one of them worse. But overall, I think it did a great job.
Yeah.
Impressions and what'd you actually... Expectations and impressions.
Very low. So my expectations of this were, and I know that there are people that talk about like gameplay over anything else. Visually, I was not interested in this at all. It was not something that appealed to me. And then furthermore,
Kind of like the Devin Talks Tabletop channel.
Furthermore, the comparison to Terraforming Mars, which I've heard a little bit, it hasn't been the only thing I've heard, but I've heard it relatively, frequently. Also did not make me interested because I also am not really a big fan of
Popular crew
Mars.
here.
Mm-hmm. Like it's just not my favorite game. And I've played with Prelude, I've played with drafting, I've played with several different like modules that make it better than the base version. I don't have friends.
Even here.
I talk about that over on Devin Talks. But so I actually enjoyed this game. I do wonder how much the time will decrease. Like the more you're familiar with the game, how quick you can get a game in, because that would be probably the only barrier of entry for me. Not that I don't want to sit down a 3-hour game, but if I'm gonna sit down for a 3-hour game, this may not be the first one I'd go to.
And to be fair, I've heard that people playing this at 2 players especially, you could definitely hit 120 minutes. 90 minutes is probably pushing it.
I could say 2 players. I could see 2 players at 2 hours flat.
Yeah.
I think because we were on camera, we were actually playing quicker than average as well, is one thing that I've discovered, because you have got that pressure of not sitting and thinking about your turns. I think 2 to 3 hours is a very comfortable always time zone, and that's going to depend on when someone ramps it. It's a big commitment. My impressions, my first expectations going to Ark Nova, I was expecting to not like the game.
Same. I was expecting to not like it.
So many other people like the game so much, and it's not that I don't agree with the wider world, but when there's so much hype around a product, I immediately become ready for it to disappoint me and skeptical of what it's going to be. Right? That's my gut check, and because it's kind of like with Kingdom Death. When I got into Kingdom Death, which people know is one of my favorite games of all time, there's a lot of people out there that love it, and then there's the main reviewers. When I got into the hobby space, hated it. Like there was criticism, right? And I've seen very little direct criticism of Ark Nova. I've only typically seen high praise from people, from social media and from videos that have gone up. I haven't watched a dedicated review, but I don't know. When it comes to first impressions, I'm excited to play this again this weekend. I'm going to be teaching Board Game Co. and Shear's going to get a chance to play it, and they both love Terraforming Mars. I'm actually a fan of Terraforming Mars. I've had some amazing experience with it, with the caveat that any version of playing it that doesn't include Prelude and drafting, I don't think it's the right game for me. And this is a funny one because this one doesn't actually include some of those core mechanics that I like so much in Terraforming Mars. It like the tableau building, I would say, is not quite as good. It doesn't have drafting. It doesn't have like a resource or economic engine.
Even without drafting, though, we made it through over 50% of the deck.
We made it through an insane of the deck.
Yeah.
The issue is
That's
not
a
making
lot.
it. The issue is not making it through the deck. It's having a choice of the cards that you need for your strategy. And I feel like, granted, I was going all birds.
You guys both with heavy birds, which that's gonna hurt you.
Yeah, I did go bird focused, and I was able to get a lot of bird cards. So maybe that would not be as big of a deal.
Yeah, and I was going bird focused so that Jesse wouldn't get the birds. That's
true.
Which
I
probably
think both
was
of
a
you competing
spiteful
for all
play.
of the birds
Yeah.
is probably what
Spiteful
helped
play.
me sneak past.
help.
But I
Sneak
definitely
past,
did. I definitely did have fun with the gameplay. So let's talk about the highs for us. What do we like about what's going on here? And this would be a good time to talk about if comparisons in Terraforming Mars or not. Like what's working, what isn't working.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna talk about the highs without comparing it to Terraforming Mars because
We don't have to.
there
It's
really
just
aren't many highs in
I don't-
Terraforming Mars than me.
No, it's just like I really don't feel like
You don't feel
this
like it's a fair
I don't
comparison.
feel that comparison to me.
I understand
makes
why
sense.
it is because
I get why it is, but-
it's a tableau building Euro style game with a lot of engines that are similar. And if you're going to compare it to anything, you compare it to the biggest in the industry.
Honestly,
I think that's fair,
It's
but
like
to me,
why every boss battler is compared to Kingdom Death.
Yeah, it's still, the overall experience for me was very different, and mechanically how you engage with it was different. But in terms of the highs for me, I think one of the things that was interesting was, take Wingspan, for example. I feel like Wingspan is a game where you're never able to fully explore your engine because the game's over by that point. Like, right when you want to start doing stuff with all the birds you've built, it's the end of the game, and you don't use your engine. You just go, oh, how can I get the most amount of eggs right now? Because that's the most amount of points at the end of the game. So in this, because it takes so long, because it is like a 2 to 3 hour game, depending on player count and familiarity with the experience, I felt like I was able to achieve my, my end game bonuses. I felt like I was able to collect like the right assortment of stuff I didn't fill out my board all the way. Partially my board allowed me to not have to have huge enclosures. But I felt like I was able to explore everything I was doing with my strategy by the end. And that felt satisfying. And it was nice to kind of see that come together slowly. And it's also because you're able to ramp up with your engine. It got to that we had a long process getting to it.
It's like 2
and then
hours
West
getting
and I had like 3 turns where we
And then we went,
Close
boom.
the gaps. Yeah.
massively surged on the board, and that felt really satisfying to
did.
jump up. And
It really
so that
did.
was good.
Yeah, I would say a high for me is going to be, I think the game actually does a really good job at being accurate to the conversation around like the theme, right? It feels like I'm building a zoo. It feels like I'm expanding these ecological subsections. It feels like I'm getting a bird pond to put down next to the water, or an aviary where I can harbor all the birds that I've had out in the open space for a long time. I like that. And the animals feel accurate to kind of the effects that they're having and the locations they have to be placed. I also think that the 2 different tracks make a ton of sense. You're trying to get your zoo to a point where financially it's sustainable while it's still doing the ecological research that it does. Like, it's this equilibrium that you're trying to hit. The thing that I maybe, when it comes to theme, it didn't sell me as much would be some of these extra special kind of bonus cards. Some of them are good, but I found them less interesting overall than just collecting really cool animals and having them kind of placed down into the hut. But I really loved things where I could get an adventure playground, or like I was saying, like a penguin habitat, and those are special tiles that actually pull over and have a different impact on my board. Along with that, with every park being new, the next time I play, I'm not going to have the same map or the same asymmetric faction abilities, because each one of our boards also has its own little puzzle that you're solving alongside of the core puzzle. I also, for the record, really like this programming track.
Yeah.
This is such a fun
action,
system to play with.
That was
And
what
I'll
I was
tell
gonna
you,
say.
even though I didn't utilize it as much as I should have, the fact that you can go through and you can upgrade certain abilities to get bonus effects or really take the most out of those actions, that always felt really good when you got something that sung, right? When you used it, used a 5-level action to build a habitat, then immediately had your bird, your animal card waiting for you to go ahead and double play 2 different animal cards. You have just enough money to pay for them. Getting a good moment in this game took time. Took 30, 40 minutes sometimes.
But it feels good.
But the good moment feels real good.
I also really like the fact that there was nothing in here, no mechanic in here that didn't work, in my opinion. Like the both of the tracks, like you talked about, worked. The reputation track worked. Going over here and putting cubes down in the research area, all that worked. There wasn't anything that you were like, oh well, I can only focus on these two things.
Yeah.
You had to focus on everything, so your mind was constantly working. You had to be aware of what was going on at all times. What's going on over there? What's going on over here? And even between turns, when Devin would take 20 minutes between each of his turns,
a long turn,
regardless of being on camera
I didn't
or
notice
not.
for the first 15.
Yeah, it was crazy. There was
Who
always
won?
something going on.
Who won?
Again, if you did actually
question
cheat,
is,
so
who lost?
therefore there was an asterisk in the game, but
The
it's
real
okay.
question, Devin, is who lost? We all know the answer.
Yeah.
They did.
The audience.
But there was nothing that didn't work as far as all of the pieces of the game worked extremely well together, and it felt very cohesive. There wasn't something that I was looking for. Well, I don't have to play with that because that part is not important. Everything was important.
Yeah. So, what didn't we like? West, I'm going to double back down on you. What's not working for you here?
So what's not working for me about this game? Are we skipping over the artwork part again?
No, you can touch on it if you want. I think some of these cards are really ugly.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really despise, I'm going to go back to Terraforming Mars, is that it's a really ugly game. This game isn't quite as ugly, but it definitely could use a facelift in multiple areas. I will say that some of these cards are slightly better, but a lot of, like, all of these things are shaded. It looks like clip art in some places.
For people that don't understand what's going on here, you take stock photography, which is all of this is going to be free to use or pay to use, like $1 an image, stock photography type of stuff, right? And when you're a publisher that doesn't want to do custom artwork or wants to do something that's more themed in terms of like, we've got 400 cards here or something.
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot.
Paying for custom artwork of every single one of those is a giant commitment. So you buy artwork and then you run it through a filter program. That filter program is going to do things like change the blacks and whites to be a certain hue, crush the highlights, lift the shadows, get it print ready, and also make it so all the cards match somewhat.
Basically.
Right? You can see on all of our general action cards down here, all of these have this blue hue over top of them, right? That's what the thing is doing. And our main action cards up here all have a similar profile. You'll see it in evidences like this owl here, where you can see a silhouette around it in the sky. Well, what's happening here is someone who's not great at Photoshop is running a program that is crushing the highlights because the highlights look too bright or don't print very well. And they either have a very soft brush over anything that's not a highlight, which is why you have the outline around the bird, or someone's going in and lifting the shadows on that bird or something there. It's not done very well, and it's not done very caringly, which leaves a lot of the cards looking like they have blotchy, washed out, or just poorly executed imagery.
Yeah, well, my thing is, like,
I don't mind the images. I mind the process.
the photorealistic images and stuff, like they thematically fit with the game. I don't love the overall style of them. I don't know the ins and outs like you do in terms of like how photo editing is done. But the thing that I don't know how else you would do it in a game that requires all of the information that this does. But whether it's your first time or whether it's your fifth time, depending on how many people you have, the iconography and graphic design is so dense. I mean, it got to the point where I would look for a card, and as long as it had one or two of the icons that I needed for, the herbivores that I was going for, I had a lot of herbivores that I was doing. Or maybe it was an herbivore plus a particular continent or region that I wanted. If it didn't have that, I would simply not read the card.
Yeah,
which means
sure.
I could be losing out on a card that is better.
But if you tried to read the card, your turns would have been 30 minutes apiece.
They would have been even longer.
In addition to that, they give you this great board. It's awesome. It's got lots of iconography information in it.
Doesn't have all of them.
It doesn't even remotely have all of them.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that's weird about the games, because there are a whole bunch of really unique cards that have lots of unique things. Every single card is different. There's not a repeat in the entire board. The other thing is component quality. I'll say, like, these little boards are really cheap and flimsy, and they're very easy to move.
I think it's like a $90 game.
Yeah, and I would
it's
feel
not-
like for a $90 game, you should have a little better component quality.
Yeah, I would
Fair.
I would agree. I think I didn't mind the quality of the cards. I thought they shuffled nice, and we're probably gonna sleeve them anyway. I would have liked.
It's a big stack of sleeve
That is
cards.
a big stack of sleeves.
Yeah, but if you're shuffling as much as you do in this game,
No,
like,
I
to
understand
reset this-
why you would do it. I'm just imagining the tower that was already this high being that
To
high.
reset this fairly, I've got to shuffle that entire tower to get that mixed in. Like that's
Yeah.
a lot, right? So it really sleeving for flexibility. I would have liked to see our boards double layered, because
Even if it was just thicker cardboard.
I would have liked to see it dual layered, because you get a lot of little elements and pieces that are slotted in. Even if it was like a game trays plastic piece or something, I've got tokens here that need to either be on or not on. I've got board pieces here where I need like an outline around it to keep them all squeezed together. Because throughout the game, I'm doing that constantly, right? I have money that needs to go into a pocket. I have workers that are either in my supply or not in my supply, and depending on how they get bumped, that shifts, right? Like it could have done with a bit more care. And we're saying this in hindsight of the game doing insanely well. When it first came out, the publisher is looking at it being like, hey, I can do a print run of 2,000 or I can do a print run of 5,000. What's my cost? Like, how many do I need to sell? How many people are going to be interested in this zoo-making game? Well, it turns out a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I can understand why you try to keep the number on production. If you're not doing a Kickstarter, if you're going straight to retail, try to keep that as tight as possible when you're first going into it.
Sure.
Stuff that's not... Have you gone through stuff that's not working for you?
He kind of piggybacked.
I said
on that.
graphic design. I can't really think of anything, to be honest.
So something that I don't love is
Should
going
these
to
have
be...
been scored at the end?
No, they were.
No, you score them when you do them.
You score when you did it.
So
Why,
that's...
why does it matter if they get pushed off then?
Because you lose it.
Because you lose that point when it
gets pushed off.
Way to interrupt. How's the game going?
No, that's a very good thing for me to point at. I do think, even though you have the chance to mitigate and put your own down there, I do think this drives your in-game strategy enough that it matters. And
like
I
the
didn't...
fact that you went for ducks, birds,
Yeah.
but also beyond the birds, a lot of your areas or other stuff didn't really effectively score here.
Nothing of mine
meant that
matched
you
up
lost
with
out on so much of the conservation points.
I mean, if I'd been able to do 2 of those effectively, I might have been where you guys are, right? Like a lot more competitive in terms
Yeah, I
of
mean,
the game.
like this alone was 9
So
conservation points.
I don't love the prerequisites. I'm not sure that there's a good fix, but I do think when you're playing the game, especially for the first few times, you're gonna have to cater yourself to those more than I think any of us fully anticipated. Like when I get this game to the table next time, I'm not only gonna make a note of it to the group, but I'm gonna look at those and I'm gonna think like, I'm going for at least 2 of those from the start of the game, period.
Yeah.
And I don't love something that's pulling me in a specific direction. How did we feel about the potential for take that? Granted, it never really came up, but let's hypothetically,
Well, the
say
one time
that you
that it
got a
didn't-
card knocked out, or let's say you got charged.
He got to use one.
He got to use one.
Yeah.
But like I'm just saying, like imagine towards mid to end of the game, you've been working for 15 minutes towards a program, and you get money taken from you, which is super hard to generate, or you get a card taken out of your hand.
I would say so you can start doing as soon as you pass that 5 symbol right there. I think if you do it in the first half of the game, maybe first third, it can genuinely have an effect. Because you really are, like, you're slowly building an engine. But at the beginning of the game, every time we got our, like, income when we would go to the break, it was like, oh, awesome, I have enough stuff to buy cards now. You know, I ended the game with over 100 coins that I couldn't use.
Yeah, but that was the last 2 rounds.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, though.
In a
It's
3-hour game, that was the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, but I think in the second half of the game, even still, I had enough money and stuff to do what I did. And I don't know what the other ones did, but this is simply taking a card or 5 coins. So that's not a lot.
So I know for a fact in the first half of the game, there were moments where you all taking cards from here frustrated me.
Yeah.
For heck no. If you're going to pull one of the 3 cards I chose to keep, or take 5 of the 15 coins, like take a third of my money, that stops me from being effective in a lot of different ways.
To be fair, there's only like 3 or 4 of that particular card. There's only 10 of those cards in the entire deck, and we only got through half the deck.
Yeah.
Granted, I threw away 3 of those cards, and I'm a huge Take That fan. I never got to use one because there were better cards to play that made more sense for me to play.
So why are they?
Forward.
If there's only 10 of if there's only a little bit in there, why are they in there? Is it to balance the game in some regards? Is it to pull someone back? Because from my side of things, I'm trying to get an engine up and running, and if I do my engine better than yours, great. I don't need.
I think it's a balancing aspect of giving someone an opportunity to go, hey, you're getting way too far ahead of me. I'm going to play something that's going to slow you down a little bit. Because I really believe there's only 3 or 4 of that particular card that you're talking about in the deck. The other one is a Venom card, which requires you to use either the space 1 or space 2. If you don't, you have to pay a little bit of money. I think it's like $1 or $2. The other one is a Constriction card, which means you can't play either your number 5 or number 4 one until you clear it through the break. And I'll say also, it's through the break. I mean, it's 3 or 4 rounds maybe before somebody does the breakthrough in that particular point.
I think on the break, I think that's honestly one of the biggest direct player interaction, like negations of someone else, is when you force a break to happen.
I had 8 cards in my hand, had to discard 5.
Like I think I did that
hurt more than
in
anything
both
else.
games. I think I was able to push it on a break when you guys had to discard over half your hand.
Yeah, multiple times.
Which is like,
sometimes
that to me is worse than, losing a little bit of money.
Way worse.
Because you could have been spending your entire time to set up a combo of cards, and you might be 1 or 2 actions away from getting rid of them and putting the ones you need out. And I mean, like that one time when I did it to you in the game, you had 2 animal cards that you were 1 action away from playing, and you had to get rid of your entire hand of strategy, except for those 2. With maybe, 1 other card.
No, you're exactly right. Yeah, so final thoughts here on Ark Nova. I think for myself, like I've said, very excited to continue playing this. This could beat Terraforming Mars for me personally. The theme is there, the gameplay is there. There's a lot of stuff that I'm loving. They're in a similar, area when it comes to kind of weight and scale. I don't know that it does though. I'm not willing to say that it's going to be beating either of those. I really like it though. It's definitely staying in the collection.
I think the main reason why people compare it to Terraforming Mars is because of the cards and the poor artwork. Because all of these cards, they've got prerequisites. You have certain things to use.
It's similar to Tableau.
That's the major thing that makes everybody go, "Oh, this is Terraforming Mars," because I think that's literally the only thing that's similar to it, in my opinion. Because the rest of the game is so much better. I think I don't want to play Terraforming Mars, and I actually really like this. Now, to be fair, I love zoos, and I think the concept of the theme is much more entertaining for me. But at the same time, this game was actually fun. I get it was 3 hours. I still really enjoyed it. Whereas after an hour of Terraforming Mars, I'm just begging for us to end the game early.
Yeah. So are you going to play it again, or are you going to go pick it up?
I definitely want to play it again for sure. As far as would I buy it, I need to play it a couple more times before I decide whether or not it's something that has to be in my collection, because 2 to 3 hours is a long ask for a game. And that's a huge thing for me, is that I want to be able to play multiple games in the same day. Whereas if you're just saying, hey, I'm going to spend 3 hours to play a game, there are some games that are totally worth it, but that's a big commitment. And sometimes that I don't have time for that, so I don't know.
Monsieur Devin.
Yeah, so I enjoy it. I enjoy it more than I enjoyed Terraforming Mars the couple times I've played it. Once again, I'm kind of with West. I don't feel a full thread of connection there that makes that my go-to comparison. But at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. I want to play it again. But my current impression of it is this is a game, if I go over to a friend's house and other people want to play it, I will happily say yes. But for a 2.5 to 3 hour experience, I have enough games in my collection that I like that don't get played enough that are at that play count. And I don't know if I can justify purchasing this when I have those that I have Mechs vs. Minions, I have Eclipse, I have I could get a 2-player game of Forbidden Stars off in that amount of time. I have enough games in that time crunch that I would rather play, and I don't necessarily want this to crowd that space. But I'd happily play it at someone else's house, or if somebody asked for it.
I'm very happy that I have a copy, and I have another copy on the way because the publisher sent us one, and I had one pre-ordered because, well, we want to cover it, right?
Yeah.
I think Shear's going to really like this. I think Alex is going to really like this.
I think Shear and Alex are going to like it a lot.
From my side of things, I want to play this enough in the next month, solo, multiplayer, whatever it is, that the rules are instilled within me, right? Like, I want to be able to get this off the shelf at any point. Because the biggest concern I have is setting it back on the shelf and in 6 months wanting to play it, kind of like Terraforming Mars for me, and needing a full refresh of all the little minute details, right? That's the biggest risk. And so I'm hoping in the next month to play it 3, 4, 5 times, do a full coverage, do a full review, do a full breakdown, and know it. Like, have it inside and out. So, there you have it. That's first impressions on Ark Nova. It's our gut check. I'm sure Alex and Shear will be talking about it as well in the future. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And go save some turtles.
Hey, I just want it to be known that I played 3 flamingo cards. He didn't play a single duck card.
You also
3.
got outbirded.
He got outbirded as well.
He beat you. It's outbirded.
Granted, some of my birds have horns, but apparently they flock, so...
Anything that flocks is a bird. We all know the truth.
Fair point.
See you later.